Hello, my name is Oscar Fire, and my voice just cracked a little bit. But today, we are going to talk about the High Druid of Shannara Tanequil. I am not going to lie, but, oh, here he is. I just took a good look at this picture and of the cover, and I'm not sure it's actually related to anything. Like, I mean, the image is clearly of the Scry Waters, right? Like, I believe that's the implication of this image. It's just that the image on the Scry Waters, it has nothing to do with it. There's nothing to do with Shannara at all. It just looks like a very nice medieval castle town, actually. Not even a castle. It's not a castle town. It's actually just a castle, isn't it? All right, I gotta stop. Anyway, gonna talk about Tanequil. So the funny thing is, I actually finished this like a week ago. But for some reason, I've just been kind of sitting on... I've just been sitting on actually talking about it. Because I'm actually not sure what to say about it. Because this book definitely 100% just feels like a bridge story. You know? Like the plot progresses, but nothing particularly substantial happens in this one. And it definitely just feels like it's kind of there to take up the space narratively between Straken and between Jarkarus and Straken. That being said, though, I chewed through this book in 2 weeks. I read through this book in 2 weeks flat, and that is possibly the fastest I've read something in a very long time. And that tells you, honestly, how compelling the narrative is, that I managed to read through it in 2 weeks, only reading it on my break time, except for the finale. I read the finale at home. But only reading it on my lunch hour at work, I shredded this book. And I'm shredding Straken as well. But no, the book, even though I say that I don't have a lot to say about it because of the nature of the book, it doesn't mean it wasn't good. It was a phenomenal book. It was really good. It was really interesting. I loved it. I actually loved it. Like I said, I think we're in the best period of Terry Brooks' writing, and this book just reinforces that. So, yeah, really happy about that. The funny thing is that something actually really kind of stuck out to me, and I'm going to interesting. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit. I think I'm going to try and look for a map of the Four Lands online and use that as a bit of a visual aid here. Because, oh boy, this is going to be a fun one to edit. Not going to be easy anyway. But, no, it's because... So in this book, if this book introduces the War on the Precandorn as an actual setting for the book. And by the way, I'm starting to notice, actually, and also being a third of the way into the final book, that actually is starting to feel a little bit like Terry Brooks has bit off a bit more than he could chew. And whereas in the last series, I thought that he gave like everything kind of equal weight and the proper amount of weight, and broadly speaking, he properly executed a story that is multifaceted, has multiple viewpoint characters, that take place in multiple locations simultaneously. I thought he balanced that really well. Let me think. I guess the best way to put it is I feel like he bit off a little more than he could chew here, because we have so many different things happening simultaneously, and it feels like that certain things don't get enough attention and other things maybe get a little too much attention. Because to break it down, we have Penn's journey into the Northland, right? We have Beck's journey to Paranor and his subsequent imprisonment. We have Shadea Aru's machinations. We have the war on the Precandorn with Pied Sanderling. We have the development of what would eventually be called the Flash Rip. We have the development of what eventually would be called the Flash Rip, with Sen Dunstan and the phony Ilverdia Alari. And there's so many things going on, I feel like I actually forgot something, but I didn't. But that's 5 separate plots, and 5 very different separate plots. And that makes a world of difference in the... I feel like that makes it... I think that's is... It's a lot. It's a lot of story, it's a lot of plot, and it feels distinctly like... there's a little too much story and plot there to really kind of like get a grasp on any one thing properly. But anyway, I kind of got off on a tangent saying that, but that was also a point I wanted to make. That it feels like there's too much. I feel like there's too much story and not enough book to tell that story. And I don't know, it feels a little bit frustrating. I know it resolves largely all right. It's just, in this case, less may have been a little more. One less viewpoint would have been better. Like, for instance, I don't think we need nearly as much Sen Dunstan, for example. Having one chapter in the beginning where it's like, hey, you basically invented a laser cannon, I think would have been sufficient. And then just don't go back to him again. Except maybe one other chapter to indicate that Ilverdia Alari is with him. But that's it. Oh, what's his name? What's the demon's name? What's the demon's name? Morik? I think it's the Morik. But anyway, so I was going to start with the point. So, in previous reviews, I have talked about the war in the Precandorn, and the idea that a war with mostly medieval technology could last for such a protracted period of time. And it is bothering me even more now, because it feels like it makes even less sense than it did before. So first of all, there is not... One of the problems with the Shannara series as a whole, the saga as a whole, is that I never get a super strong sense as to what the scale and scope of the 4 lands is. I look at the map and I don't know how much distance goes from the eastern edge to the western edge of the map, right? I just don't. I can get a vague idea based on the rough travel times on foot that we get from the earlier parts of the series, but it's not super clear what the exact distances are, right? And then on top of that, you have this war, a war that has now lasted for 30 years. A war that has lasted for 30 years that has basically been a World War I-esque stalemate, which, again, to reiterate from my last video, doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that in medieval combat, you would have a World War I-esque stalemate. And the primary reasons for that are, I think there's 2 or 3. There's 2 or 3 reasons. The first reason, though, is population. In World War I believe the world's population was roughly 1 billion people. That's a lot of people to throw into combat. Is it just 1 billion? I think it's just... Anyway, it was 1 billion, maybe 2 billion, something in that ballpark. Anyway, that means that there's a lot of people that you can throw into battle. So the attrition of a protracted conflict like that is going to is naturally baked into it, right? The casualties you're going to take, the war fatigue, and everything. Second of all, technology. The technology of the day was a big part of the reason that World War I was a long, protracted, brutal stalemate of a conflict. Even though it wasn't a total stalemate in all theaters, just primarily in the European theaters. But it's technology. The invention of gas-powered machine guns and the advent of highly accurate long-range rifles and heavy artillery that could obliterate entire landscapes with massive barrages, the invention of airplanes, the use of massive battleships. Admittedly, battleships weren't super useful vessels, surprisingly, but either way, World War I had a lot of technology that could kill you really fast, which made it very difficult to actually be aggressive on the battlefield. And that is a major factor in how that war turned out. And I guess it was just 2 reasons. I feel like there's a third one, though. But I feel like I'm forgetting it. I feel like I'm totally forgetting a third reason. Anyway, but that is the primary reason, though, that World War I was the kind of conflict it was. If any, the war on the Precandorn, though, this protracted 30-year-long war, it sounds like it's like occurring like at these fortifications on the Precandorn Heights, and the 2 sides are dug in and nothing's moved. And like I said in the last video, medieval combat's not like that. In medieval combat, the battle is most battles would be relatively pitched, relatively short, and one side would rout before the other, and the battle would be over. Whether or not the side that routed the other was strong enough to continue the offensive is a matter of debate, or as a matter of circumstance, I should say, not really debate, it's a matter of circumstance. But at the end of the day, one side or the other would win, and there would be no stretching out of the war. The closest you would get is a conflict like the 100 Years' War, where what you would have is occasionally England would invade France, trying to assert their claims over French territory, because thanks to various marriages and frankly even the more ancient Norman claims to parts of France, to parts of modern day France, the English basically were trying to. That was most of what the 100 Years' War were, and every decade or two, the British would send an army over and try to conquer parts of France and succeed and fail in various ways, and then they'd be driven back across the Channel, and the war would cool down again for another 10 years, and then new king because someone died again, and they cross the Channel again, and it all start all over again. And that's what that would be. And it feels to me distinctly like that's what this kind of war should be. It should be a war like that, where basically one side attacks, the other side defends, probably the Freeborn and the Elves, defend, throw back the Federation, and then everyone kind of goes home for a little while. And then intelligence is like, Federation's mustering for another attack, and then everyone would muster again, and it would happen again and again. And it becomes a lot more obvious when we introduce the Precandorn in this book. And it's obvious because if you look at a map of Shannara, and I'm going to look at it in the book here, but I'll try to have an image here. You look at the location of the Precandorn Heights, right? Located to the south of Leah, and according to Terry Brooks, the Precandorn is basically a pair of plateaus with a defile between them that is fortified, one by the Elves and the other by the Freeborn, the Freeborn Alliance, the Dwarves and Callahorn and trolls with them and everything. And can we see the problem here, kind of right away? If you can't, I'll make it obvious. Also, I'm kind of looking at this map here, and I'm just realizing it. Can you? Assuming I'm using the correct map here, the layout feels like it's very wrong, especially in the Eastland. Actually, the Westland doesn't look right either. But where's the? There are details missing. Why is the Scylla de Land not attached to the Silver River? It's like a lake in the middle of the river's flow. You know what? I'm not gonna question it. Anyway, so the Precandorn Heights is this one spot to the north of, it appears to be to the north of Dectera. I actually thought it was to the north of Arishag. And first, and this is, by the way, why I brought up distances, because there's no clear indication of how wide the battle lines are. Because this looks like a lot of territory the Precandorian Heights control, but the war can't possibly be occupying a front larger than probably 10 miles wide, if that. That feels like an overestimation for the implied population of the region, which I can imagine exceeds more than like 2 million. And that's in total, all 4 lands. And yes, I'm just thinking about it. I'm just looking at it. I'm just thinking about it. And there's a lot of things that just don't make sense about this, because the front can't be that big. So what does it tell you? If the Federation really has the advantage in numbers, the thing the Federation can easily do is just split their armies and march them to the west, towards the Dome Forest and Shady Vale. They can march them to the east, through the, from Dectera through the Battlemound Lowlands or through the Lower Aenar or whatever. They could do, they have airships, so they could fly their troops. They could only fly the troops over the enemy's head because they'd just be intercepted by enemy airships. But they could take some airships and just fly some commando squads, as it were, around the battlefield and start wreaking havoc in the back. And it feels distinctly to me like Terry Brooks did not think about the implications of doing this whatsoever. He especially with airships, because airships are a game-changing technology. Now, granted, they are not like some sort of superb battlefield weapon that overwhelm everything, at least until the flash whip is invented. But the airship is a massive tactical advantage to any side that has it. And of course, both sides have them. They can be utilized not just for reconnaissance and direct combat, but they can also be utilized for stealth missions. They can be utilized for any sort of mission you can really think of, because they fly in the air. They don't have the limitations. And the thing is that airship technology is really advanced right off the bat. It's not like naval technology, sea naval technology, where, like for thousands of years, the most advanced vessels that, excuse me, the most advanced vessels that people made were galleys and triremes that had small sails and teams of oarsmen, pushing the boat along. It wasn't until the invention of more advanced carpentry and more advanced weaving to make it, to make bigger sails, more capable sails, and advanced, the ability to engage in navigation, to engage in advanced navigational techniques so that you don't get lost while you're at sea, that allowed us to make, transoceanic sailing vessels. Airships don't have that limitation. Airships are not limited by that. We are already at the era of making air galleons and caravels sailing through the air that can travel across the ocean. And I feel like Terry Brooks did not consider at all the implications of creating a technology that's that advanced, while simultaneously having a war that could take advantage of having technology that advanced. You can't avoid the implications of that. And honestly, it damages the overall story, because by not thinking about it, by not thinking about these implications and thinking about how it all works, the end result is that everyone seems like they're a little dumb for engaging in this long-term war that could have easily just been, you could easily just kind of avoid. That you could easily just kind of sidestep, especially the Federation, because the Federation has the numbers for it. The Federation literally could just make 2 armies and march one of those armies around the Freeborn and stab deep into the Westland or the Eastland. They don't have to worry about going into Calahorn, because guess what? They have numbers. And even if the Freeborn end up intercepting that flanking army, that forces the Freeborn, who are outnumbered, to split their forces. Suddenly you have a massive tactical advantage, because even if you have 2 smaller armies facing off against two smaller armies, those 2 smaller armies are at far greater risk of destruction than if they were combined into one army. But, you know, these are just things I think about, and it's a little bit on the frustrating side, because it's one of those things where I always, like I said before, Terry Brooks is good at the small-scale tactics. The battle where the Dectera, the Federation flagship, destroys the Elven fleet, and the subsequent route is very, very well written, very intelligently written, I think. But Terry Brooks has literally no clue about how broader strategic considerations work, and it shows. It shows really hard, because his war does not make sense. But anyway, that's all I have to say about Tanequil. I didn't mean to get all bogged down like I did. I mean, there's other things I could talk about, but I feel like they'd actually be better off discussed in the series recap video. And this is probably a good one to kind of start talking about, to just talk about this kind of side topic. But anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I will catch you when I finish Straken, which, at the rate I'm going, might be in another week or so. Until next time, everybody.